Hello. So today's subject is not something I actually want to talk about. In some ways, I'd rather not make this video because it's a depressing subject. It's a very disturbing development that's been going on in recent weeks in our capital. This isn't entirely a new phenomenon, and that is important to point out, but it's been happening too frequently recently, and so has become something of a moral panic. And I am referring, of course, to acid attacks. The first sort of high profile case that came up in recent weeks was an attack on a young Muslim couple, not a couple as in they were together, but young guy and his cousin, and she was celebrating her 21st birthday. And this guy came up to them, threw acid in their face, absolutely no reason. Jamil Mukhtar, 37, suffered serious burns on his face, and his young cousin, Rishim Khan, even worse burns based on the photos. These are life-changing injuries, not to mention the psychological injuries that no doubt will incur. As I understand it, I've never had the experience of being burned by acid, but as I understand it, it is excruciating. And people who have suffered this have had to go through countless operations to get, skin grafts and so on. And the most sinister thing about it is there is absolutely no seeming reason for it. Not that there would ever be a justified reason, but these attacks seem to be random on strangers. We've heard in the past about so-called honor attacks, which are equally evil and equally despicable. But this seems to be a new phenomenon where these are just random attacks on anybody. And I find that very disturbing. And I have to say that the victim in this case, one of the victims, Mr. Mukhtar, said that he feels strongly if the perpetrator had been an Asian man and the victims two white people, it would have been classed as a terrorist attack. Now, I think he may have a point with that. And I think maybe, I guess my concern with classing this as terrorism, although it's certainly as serious as, for example, some jihadists running up and stabbing someone, um, it may give these people some sort of sick credibility if they see themselves as terrorists. So that would be my only concern, that applying such a label could actually encourage some sick people. There are sick people out there. Now, in this case, the man named in connection to it, 24-year-old John Tomlin, apparently has far-right neo-Nazi connections. He's been using language on his Facebook page that is closely related to the sort of far-right rhetoric that we often see in terms of blaming us, indigenous people, etc., etc., etc. Now, this case was bad enough in itself, but this has now been happening quite frequently. There was a case a few days ago where no fewer than 5 people were attacked in a single night in East London. Believe it was the borough of Newham. 5 people in a single night. And it tends to be, the suspects tend to use mopeds or motorbikes to cover their faces. And apparently, pizza delivery men have now been protesting out of fear that they're being targeted for their motorbikes to be stolen. And they themselves are obviously running risk of this. And what's disturbing is on that night where 5 people were attacked, a 16-year-old was arrested. 16. It happened again last night. A paramedic was called out and she was attacked. This is not a new phenomenon. If you look at through Victorian crime files, you'll find it was quite common in London at that time as a form of attack. Acid in some form or another has been around for centuries, so it's not a new form of attack. But I think this development is certainly disturbing. I think, I mean, we focus a lot on the problem with knife crime in London, and that is a serious problem. But you can survive a knife attack and you can The scar can heal, and I'm not minimizing it for a second. It's a very serious crime. But I would say an acid attack is even worse because the injuries, the visible injuries, last a lot longer, I would argue. Um, Plus, the fact that it's on the face, that is deliberately to try and disfigure someone. It's disgusting. Um, it can lead to blindness. It can lead to not actually death, but in a way, this is almost worse because it is giving people a life sentence. So, what needs to be done? I really believe strongly there are several approaches that need to be taken, and I'm really reiterating what a lot of people are thinking out there. Firstly, there has to be action. I do believe that we need much tougher regulation on the sort of material that is being sold, the sort of liquids, corrosive liquids that are being sold. Only people that really need that stuff are scientists, um, people who have a license to do chemistry. Um, this should be treated the way that knives are sold. As I understand it, you need to be 16 to buy a knife. We need the same sort of approach to these sort of corrosive minerals. Now, there's always people who say, oh, banning it won't work and let's do nothing. That's the problem I have with that attitude. It's basically they say it won't work, so their attitude is do nothing. What is the alternative? If you're saying that the answer is not to do anything, just give hardline sentences. Now, I'm all in favour of that, which I'll come to in a second. But there has to be actually practical action on the ground as well to try and prevent this. Yes, it might mean more paperwork for scientists. It might mean more paperwork for people who really need that stuff. But that is a small price to pay. If you legitimately need these sort of liquids, um, they say, oh well, you could get it from a car exhaust or whatever. It's to me, it's the same nonsense that is spun out about the gun debate. Criminals will get it anyway, so let's do nothing. No, I don't accept that. I think if you really need this stuff, then you'll accept that there is a serious problem going on here, and the government needs to be seen to be taking action. So I really do think that um, tough regulation would help. It would help to at least make it harder to get this stuff. Yes, there can be other ways that can get it. I get that. But that doesn't mean do nothing. Because that is basically what you're saying if you are against any sort of regulation on this. So that could be one step, and it needs to be very strictly implemented. Secondly, I do believe that these people need the harshest of harsh sentences. This is one such crime where liberal logic just wears thin. Those who are of the school of thought that, oh, punishment is fickle, jail has no purpose. Are you honestly, rationally going to tell me that someone who would throw a burning liquid in a stranger's face shouldn't be behind bars? These people are dangerous. They're dangerous, sadistic criminals, and they need to be behind bars for a very, very long time. I would say in the most extreme cases, i.e., with if someone's been made blind, I would be tempted to give them a whole life tariff. There needs to be peaceful public pressure to ensure that some weak judge doesn't pass out pathetic sentences that don't reflect the gravity of this crime. Because we have been seeing too many examples of overt leniency. There could be few crimes worse than this. It really, really is a destructive, damaging, despicable, evil crime. So the sentences have to reflect that. Thirdly, I think for so called young offenders, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be named. If they are capable of going around on a motorbike, throwing a dangerous liquid in someone's face, they're old enough to be named. We need to start changing the mentality to this, that the protection should be for them. That's nonsense. I would suggest a 15 or 14-year-old thug who's doing this to someone needs to be named, if for no other reason than public safety, so that people know who they are. So I'll leave it there. Like I say, this isn't a pleasant subject. I promise I will try and get more positive videos going in the next few videos, because recently the videos have been very heavy and very serious subjects. And it's not that they're not valid. I think these things do need to be spoken about, but I because of the subject nature, they are depressing. But that's how I feel about it. I just can't understand the mentality of people who would do this. I believe a hate crime is part of it, as this guy said. in that case, he probably was targeted as they were Muslims. There are some on the right who want to downplay that and pretend it doesn't exist. It does. There is anti-Muslim bigotry out there. It exists. It is real. Traditionally, when we've heard about acid attacks in sort of recent years, it's been in the context of so-called honour attacks. That is absolutely despicable and should be treated as such. But what we have been seeing in recent weeks is something new. It is literally attacks on random people, and it's sinister. So this is a real problem that we are facing, and we need to deal with it. Thanks for watching.